Greetings YouTube, Justin Ormsby here again. In my last video I talked a little bit about No Child Left Behind and this idea that I call the Great Divide, which is basically the difference between what professional educators think about quality educational policy and what professional politicians think about quality educational policy. In that video I discussed very briefly two people who had approached me with two rather conspiratorial ideas about why they think No Child Left Behind has been allowed to continue, even though a great deal of people who are employed in the education field continue to say it's not functional as a policy. After having watched my last video, one of those people approached me again and said that he was concerned that there was still this faction of politicians on the right side of the political spectrum that were intentionally supporting policies that they thought would fail in order to discredit public education and move towards the privatization of education. Now, I don't think this is beyond the realm of possibility. I do think that a lot of conservative politicians believe that everything functions better in the free market and should be privatized, and I do know that one of the conservative fixes for failing schools is through the school choice or school voucher program, which allows kids in failing schools to take the government money that would have paid for their education in a public school and apply that to a private school or a charter school or some other school option. I do, however, think that this conspiracy theory is unlikely, and I think even stronger that if it does exist, it's inconsequential. And I think that for these reasons. First and foremost, conservative politicians are not the only people that support No Child Left Behind. I think I remember being particularly disappointed in both the Bush-Gore and the Bush-Kerry elections when both politicians proclaimed their support for No Child Left Behind. There are plenty of left-leaning politicians who don't agree with the privatization of everything, education included, who also support, at least in some version, the ideas that No Child Left Behind puts forth. There are also a lot of just regular citizens in this country who, if they don't support No Child Left Behind by name, they at least support a lot of the ideas that No Child Left Behind puts forth, things like accountability through high-stakes standardized testing and the idea that many aspects of the government could be run most efficiently if they were run like a successful business was run. In fact, I just had a conversation a week or so ago with a bunch of people who, above all things, were advocating for Donald Trump to run for president in the next election. Now, Donald Trump himself is pretty inconsequential in this discussion, but the ideas that they were putting forth is that many things in our society that the government controls would be done most efficiently if they were run by business people. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, except when it comes to education, which I've already expressed my opinions about why I don't think education functions well as a business. So my point here is that if there is this conspiracy on the right to discredit public education and move towards privatization, I think it's irrelevant, because if we woke up tomorrow and by magic all of these right-wing politicians in this conspiracy decided that they were no longer going to do that, then we would still have No Child Left Behind, and we would still have all the problems associated with No Child Left Behind, because so many other people support it for so many different reasons. So whether the conspiracy exists or not, to me, is inconsequential. I don't think that that's where we, as educators and activists for good quality education in this country, I don't think that's where we should should put our attention, because if you consider that the problem, the conspiracy to be the problem, even if you fix it, you're not really left with much of a change. We still have No Child Left Behind as our federally mandated education reform in this country. The second point is that if you agree with me that a politician's number one job is to get reelected, to ensure that they continue to work, then I think you could also agree with me that it doesn't make sense for a politician to support a policy that they intend to fail. If we move our minds sort of out of education into something that's more culturally relevant in the short term, like healthcare, and then we become conservative politicians and try to plan this out, it just doesn't make much sense. So for example, I'm a conservative politician, and I decide that, well, first of all, I believe very strongly that that healthcare should remain in the private sector. That's extremely important to me. So what I do is I go to a bunch of my conservative buddies and I plan this conspiracy. And in that conspiracy, here's what we're going to do. We're going to support some sort of nationalized healthcare system in the hopes that it will fail, so that we can then turn around and ensure that we can move healthcare back to the private sector. That may work if a national healthcare system proved to be a failure. Then you certainly have some leverage there to move back towards the private sector. But the problem is that you've also signed your name to failing legislation. And I think that's a hard sell to your constituency, who, when elections come up, are going to ask you an awful lot of questions about why you voted yes on a bill that was ineffective. Same thing in education. If a conservative politician expects No Child Left Behind to fail, then I think they must assume that's only going to look bad for them when election time rolls around. I just can't. I can't see a politician putting that much thought into a conspiracy theory and risking their own careers for a political agenda. I could be completely wrong on that, but it in my mind it doesn't really pan out. And the third point is, and this one is based entirely on my own cynicism, and I understand 100% if you disagree with everything that's about to come out of my mouth. But having worked for the government for a while, and having seen how the government functions and watching how the bureaucracy works and things of that sort, I'm very hesitant to ever accept conspiracy theories as being particularly accurate, simply because the level of organization and the level of secrecy that would have to go on to have a sort of underground secret political agenda that nobody found out about, I'm just not sure that any group of people is really capable of doing that. Consider that we just had a fairly large election with a lot of disunity and disloyalty on the conservative side of politics, with the Tea Party actively combating the conservative Republicans for political spots. I would think if any politician even caught a whiff that this conspiracy may exist, that would be on their political talking points forever. That just seems extremely damaging to me, to allow your opponents to come out and say that you had intentionally supported failing policy, that you were trying to undermine education, that you were hoping that education failed, that you didn't care about the education of our children, that the kids who would be educated in these failing systems were expendable and disposable to you. I don't know that anyone would risk that, and unless they could ensure that their conspiracy ideas would be 100% secret. And I just don't know that anything in the days of WikiLeaks and the internet and all of these technological communication abilities that we have, I just don't know that a conspiracy theory especially one that's really that insignificant in the grand scheme of things, could ever really truly function uh, without being found out. Uh, like I said in the last video, I don't say anything with with the idea that I'm right. I don't expect you to agree with me. I do think that I've thought a lot of this stuff out, and I think that it is something, all these ideas are things that are worthy of consideration if you're thinking about these things yourself. But please, please, please consider what I have to say, consider your own opinions, and I would love to hear what you have to say about these issues. Comment away. I really do think that that's how education works, is that you hear a variety of perspectives and you weigh them all and you come up with the best possible solution. And so this is my perspective, and I'd love to hear what other people have to offer. As a final note on here, I want to apologize briefly to my good friend and colleague Jonathan Hall, who is a band director in the Florida region. I inadvertently misplaced him on the map when I indicated where he was located in that last video. Jonathan actually teaches at Bradford High School in Stark, Florida, which is not in the Panhandle area. It's more on the east side of the state. So, Mr. Hall, I apologize profusely for that mistake, and I will not make it again. Thank you for pointing that out to me. Guys, if you have any questions or comments, please, please, please post them. And until next time.